Today I'm going to do a cooking tutorial on one of my favorite low-carb dinners, cream spinach and seared scallops. It's really easy to make this dinner low-carb, but it's also easy to make it delicious. So stick around until the end of the video if you want some diet tips on your way to permanent sustainable fat loss. Other than that, let's get cooking. Okay, we're going to start with cream spinach. It's primarily a side dish, and it's a side dish that you can keep warm on the stove without it losing flavor or texture. Whereas your protein you want to cook last because it will keep cooking if you let it linger. Like a steak will turn from medium rare to medium, scallops will get rubbery. So do your spinach first. Put the frozen spinach in a strainer over a bowl and get out as much water as you possibly can. Set aside and get your ingredients ready. Half cup of chopped onions, 3 tablespoons shredded parmesan, 1 tablespoon butter, teaspoon of lemon zest, and this is 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika with the secret ingredient of a little nutmeg grated into the paprika. Then you've got your 3/4 cup of heavy whipping cream. And we're good to go. Okay, turn the burner on to medium-high. Add your tablespoon of butter, swirl it around, get it nice and melted for the onions. You're going to caramelize the onions in this butter, and caramelizing onions makes the flavor of any dish you're making just pop. So add the onions, give them about 5 minutes of cooking in the butter over medium-high, and they'll get nice and golden brown like this. And when they're at that point, they are caramelized. Now add the minced garlic, and this only cooks for a few seconds, 30 seconds to a minute at the most, because you can easily burn garlic. And now we're going to add the spices, the smoked paprika, the lemon zest, and remember that there was a little bit of nutmeg in that smoked paprika too, the secret ingredient. So everything is mixed together now, and it's time for the cream. 3/4 cup of heavy cream into the pan, and you look at how it bubbles. You want to reduce this by about half or until it's the thickness that you desire. If it's bubbling too much, turn down the heat a little bit. And now, ready for the spinach. Make sure that it's as dry as you can. Here's how much juice was left after I let it sit in the colander. And here we go. Add the spinach to the cream and the onion and the spice mix. Stir it all together to mix the flavors and turn down the heat a little bit because it will be waiting for the scallops and you'll probably have to reheat it a little bit. Add the Parmesan cheese, knowing that you can always add more later also. This spinach dish is a recreation of a food memory that my husband and I had in Spain. And I think I finally nailed it. Here it is, waiting for the scallops now, and it is wonderful. I like more Parmesan cheese, so I added a little bit more. Now, on to the scallops. Set the cream spinach aside, and we will come back to it. Scallops can be really quick and easy to make, but there are 2 really important things to remember with scallops that will make them perfect. The first is to get them dry. These scallops were frozen, so they took a lot to get them dry. I had to drain them in a colander, let them sit for a while, and then pat them with paper towels as frequently as you can. The drier, the better. The second key to perfect scallops is searing them in a very hot pan. Keep the seasoning pretty simple. I used some salt and pepper, and now I'm going to grind up some fennel seeds. I use just a coffee grinder, but it's dedicated to spices and not coffee. Grinding whole spices can really add a flavor boost instead of using pre-ground spices that you might get in the grocery store or order online. You never really know how fresh those are. And when you grind your seeds, you know that you're getting a pretty fresh taste. I love fennel on my scallops. I had it in a restaurant once, and I've never looked back. I always make my scallops with fennel now. But Just pick your own favorite spice. Smoked paprika would be good too. Okay, let's sear these scallops. Turn your burner onto high, and you want to add the oil and get it as high as you can. You should be able to see some smoke. High heat equals a good sear, remember that. Okay, so now I'm using some tongs. I'm putting the scallops in. You should hear them sizzle. And I'm doing it in a concentric circle, primarily so I can remember where I started so that you know which scallop to turn first. Once they're all in, season them again on the top side now with some salt and pepper and ground fennel. And once they've cooked for about a minute, lift up the first scallop that you put in and see if it's got that nice golden brown sear on it. If it does, then you're ready to start turning the scallops over. Once turned, they cook really quickly. They only need maybe a minute. And there you go, a bed of cream spinach with fennel crusted seared scallops on top. Looks good to me. Okay, dinner's on the table. Time for those diet tips. Tip number 1, we used heavy whipping cream in the cream spinach. And heavy whipping cream is basically butter. And butter is used a lot of times in what's called bulletproof coffee. I myself can't stand butter in coffee, but heavy whipping cream, I'm there. Heavy whipping cream does not spike your insulin, which is why it's okay on a low carb diet. It does have calories, and so you don't want to put a half a cup in your coffee, but it will not spike your insulin. Tip number 2, we also used frozen spinach. Frozen spinach does not lose any of its nutrients just because it's frozen. In fact, sometimes frozen fish and frozen spinach and frozen vegetables can have more nutrients because they're flash frozen and they haven't been sitting out on the grocery store shelves for very long. Okay, tip number 3. Spinach is one of the best vegetables that you can eat on a low carb diet. It's packed with nutrients, some of that great magnesium that you need. A lot of people take magnesium supplements. You eat the spinach, you don't need the supplements. So even though protein and fat are great, you do need some vegetables to up the micronutrients account. It's not all about macros. And that brings us to tip number 4, and it's all about salt. Salt has gotten a bad rap in the past because so many prepared foods and restaurant foods have gone really heavy on the salt. However, if you cook at home, you do need to salt your food. You need the salt. It's one of those electrolytes that will help stave off what's known as carb flu. Basically, it will help you stave off fatigue, and it's magnesium, salt, water, and potassium are the 4 electrolytes that you want to balance on any kind of a low carb diet. So with that, I'm having Plum Orange Cinnamon syrup today with some sparkling water. This is going to be our toast. And what should we toast to today? I chose plum because it seemed to go with spinach. It's a little bit more fall-like, and as we're coming into fall, I thought it sounded really good. So let's toast to fall. Heck, cheers. Here's to fall. Tastes very autumnal.